All right. Thanks for sticking with us. Before we jump into Texans, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that notification button. Hey, we're racing to 500 subs here.
500 subs.
We hit that 500 mark. You'll get a choice of some swag here that we'll ship out to one lucky winner that we randomize from our sub list. So don't forget to hit that subscription button. And listen, we got a lot more of these type of episodes coming, a lot of breakdown of the divisions, draft breakdown, mock drafts. So hit that notification button so you want to see a lot of our pretty faces. And if you don't want to see our pretty faces, listen to our pretty voices, because we're going to throw it up there on Spotify as well.
Yeah, some people tell me I have a face for radio, so,
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, you know what? Can't all be pretty, right?
No.
Well, let's get on to the best team in the AFC South from last season, which is the Houston Texans, right? This was a team we were so excited about last season.
Yeah.
This was a team that we said was, of all the teams that were going to improve last season, it was going to be the Houston Texans. The writing was on the wall. The players were in place. They made all the right moves. They have a good young coach. The defense was improved. They had a ton of draft picks and draft capital that they invested in, and their quarterback panned out.
And we were wrong about one thing.
We were.
Dameon Pierce.
Yeah. No, you were wrong about one thing.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, but most people were where they were drafting him.
Yeah. So this is some really awesome additions to this team that I think really make them a better, more complete team. But this is a team that everything else is kind of staying in place, right? We love C.J. Stroud. All the ADP for every one of these players has jumped through the roof from last season. And when you got Nico Collins and Tank Dell at value last season, not this year.
No.
I mean, both of them I've seen go within the first four rounds.
All three of the guys are within a round and a half of each other right now.
So that is both intriguing to me and somewhat scary to me.
Correct.
So because all these guys are going so high up, you're going to get burned by one of them.
Well, someone's also going to slip.
Right. Well,
that's the thing you got to look at too.
Yeah. So let's start with the quarterback position with C.J. Stroud. He is kind of the end of my top tier quarterbacks. And that's kind of the end of my list there. You have Josh Allen, Hurts, Lamar, Mahomes, and then Stroud, and that's it for me on my top tier. Is there anyone else that you'd kind of put into that?
Well, we're talking about fantasy here, and even with 6-point touchdown,
Anthony Richardson, maybe?
He's the only other one that you could probably put in there. And I'm just going to put this out on, listen, we've had plenty of bold takes here, but would it be bold of me to say that Kyler Murray finishes above C.J. Stroud this year?
I don't think that's a bold statement. I think,
but that's my prediction. I think that's going to happen because I think we're sleeping on Kyler, and we'll get into detail when we talk about the cards. But I like C.J. Stroud. My fear is riding on the coattails of last year's success. You have teams now that have seen plenty of tape against you, that have plenty of opportunities. And listen, he could come out and, again, I said it earlier, he could be a Hall of Fame quarterback in the making, and he could come out and just trash teams again, which is quite possible. But I err on the side of caution taking a quarterback that early on a guy who's had only 1 year to show me versus taking Pat Mahomes around later or something like that.
Well, this the thing is, like, it depends on where you're getting him, because I've seen Stroud taken above some of these guys.
Above Mahomes.
And I've seen Stroud taken around after these guys.
Yeah.
So it depends on where he's available. I like him as, like I said, the tail end of that top tier. And it's in him and then Anthony Richardson the next two for me.
That round 4, round 5.
Yeah, and if that's, I wouldn't shy away from him, because I think that there's so many really elite weapons here. And don't get me wrong, Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell are all elite receivers.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
And they complement each other really, 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 really well, because none of them are the same style of receiver. They all can go deep. They're all vertical threats. They're all possession guys. All of them can do very similar things.
They all run fantastic routes.
They're all great route runners, but they're all in completely different frames.
Yep.
And you are going to have matchup nightmares across the board.
Well,
and I think C.J. Stroud, what we saw from him last year was a level of maturity from a young quarterback that knew how to decipher defenses and know where his matchup was. We saw towards the end of the season, after Tank Dell got hurt, that it was a lot of just force-feeding Nico Collins, and Nico Collins just blew up with that. But when you have the addition of Stephon Diggs, when you have a Tank Dell that comes back healthy, which he is because he just fractured his fibula, he'll be fine. You're going to have a matchup by matchup approach, and you cannot double cover any one of these guys because if all three of them are on the field and you add Schultz and in a 4 wide receiver set, you still have Noah Brown and you still have Robert Woods. Like, this wide receiver core might be the best wide receiver core in football.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the three, it's hard to
in terms of the entire room.
Well, yeah, I mean, Skoranek was added to there, but I'm just saying the three in general. You put them up against any other three, yeah, you could argue easily that it's the best three.
And yeah, they bring Mixon in, but I think Mixon is just going to be a more efficient Singletary and Dameon Pierce from last year. But the things I like about this team is that they have a young head coach who's a defensive-minded head coach. They have young defensive players who are hungry. You have young offensive players who are hungry. You make some key additions of veterans who are also hungry. Like, this team wants to win across the board. You have Joe Mixon who wants to win a Super Bowl. You have Stephon Diggs who wants to go to the Super Bowl. You have Nico Collins and Tank Dell who were disregarded as nobodies the last 2 years. Well, last 2 years for Nico, last year for Tank. And now they're all, like, the one thing that scares me about this team is the spotlight going to be too big for all of them. Now, I did think that them bringing in Stephon Diggs was a huge mistake. I generally think that he is a cancer to the locker room. And I think he's passionate, but that passion doesn't translate when you have a young team well. And now the only upside to that is that D'Amico Ryans is the head coach of that team.
Yeah.
And D'Amico Ryans will put him in his place.
Yeah, he's a no.
And I think that when he was in Buffalo, he was a prima donna and he got his way in.
Well, he was a prima donna in Minnesota too.
Right, but he was able to get his way with these older coaches there. D'Amico Ryans is going to be like, shut the hell up. Like, know your role. We're here as a team.
Yeah.
We're going to win as a team. And don't get me wrong, I like Stephon Diggs, but it's kind of the reason I see him being drafted after Tank Dell and Nico Collins, and that's where I kind of value him. I don't care where ADP puts him, but I think in terms of chemistry, like, it's already there with Tank Dell, it's already there with Nico Collins, and Stephon Diggs is kind of the outside man there.
Well, no, I think he fills a void that the team didn't truly have last year, and the void was these short yardage, intermediate routes that you were having to have Nico Collins run at times or try and have Tank Dell run at times, that you now have a person in there that allows you to run those routes who's pretty much a bread and butter at doing that when he was in Buffalo at times. Like, he was always open. Now, he dropped a couple, some bad drops here and there, but that was what he was great at. He no longer has to stretch the field because you have Tank Dell for that. Nico Collins can still stretch the field too as well. So it allows people to play to the strengths, and it's what the Rams did with Odell Beckham when they took him to take them to the Super Bowl, was when they had the opportunity to grab him, he had the intermediate routes, he got himself open early off the jump, off the line. It was easy to get the ball to him so that they can continue to stretch the field down with Cooper Kupp at different places. So I think that's where it benefits his team.
Think that's where, down the stretch, what they missed was when Tank Dell got hurt. They were missing that with that missing piece, that extra wide receiver, and now they just have so much depth there. Like I said, they still have Noah Brown, they still have Robert Woods. They added Ben Skoranek. They're 6 deep at wide receiver where they have solid plays there.
I honestly think
probably the best top 3 wide receivers on any team.
It doesn't bump down Tank Dell for me too much.
It doesn't at all for me.
At first, it wanted me to bump him down because I think in terms of snap percentage, I think it doesn't keep him as high, but not too low. But the way his boom ability in a game keeps his value so high for me that I almost like him. The problem is they're drafted so close together. I wish Tank Dell was being drafted like a round or two later.
Yeah.
Where then I would take him over Nico Collins and Diggs. But because they're so close together, like, I'm riding on the youth of Nico Collins, and if Stephon Diggs slips, that's who I want to go with. It's still hard for me to take. I take Tank Dell or Nico if they're there, but I'm not taking Stephon unless he drops down to me because it's a volume play at that point to me.
Right. And like Tank Dell is a guy that I have a lot of faith in. I drafted him last year in our league that we play in.
And you get to keep him.
And I get to keep him, which is I absolutely love. But this is I don't think his value slips at all. Like he, as small as the guy he is, that he was utilized in the red zone on short routes
because he had to.
Well, he can just get open,
but he had to.
No, you didn't have to. You still had Nico Collins. You still had Schultz. Like they still had guys there.
Yes, they had those guys. But I'm saying, who was after them?
No,
him.
Noah Brown, Robert Woods. He beat those guys out.
Correct. So he was the next guy up.
Right.
He was the best receiver there. Now you bring in Stephon Diggs. He's not a slouch. He could arguably be a Hall of Fame wide receiver,
right,
based on stats.
What I would say is that I think that if they're all going to eat into each other, which is why I was like, I hated it from a personal perspective when Stephon Diggs signed there, because he's going to eat into both Nico Collins and Tank Dell. And I think they're going to eat
based on money alone.
Well, he's going to eat into their value at fantasy. I like both of those guys over Stephon Diggs. I would agree with you. If I'm doing it in a redraft league and Stephon Diggs is the guy that's been falling, not Tank Dell and Nico. When Stephon Diggs falls, if I don't have the opportunity to go grab Nico or go grab Tank, I'm not opposed to grabbing Stephon Diggs.
No, that's the only time I'd grab him, though, is if he fell enough.
In the last mock draft that we did,
you grabbed him after I grabbed Nico.
When Nico was there, Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell went, and Stephon Diggs was there, and I didn't go. I went DJ Moore.
But then then Stephon Diggs went after you. Yeah, but again, he didn't fall. It was the same round.
It was just all in the same round.
That's what I'm saying. If he falls around, I like him better.
Yeah.
But here's the thing about Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins. Sometimes you gotta follow the money. And the two guys got paid. Tank Dell is still, obviously, he's playing off his second year of his rookie contract. You got to follow the money. And unless Stephon Diggs comes out and is just a horrible wide receiver now, which I don't think. I mean, what do you have, 1,500 yards last year?
Yeah, I just don't think. I don't necessarily think you follow the money. I think that this team, the way they're built is to be able to pass the ball and play action off it. Listen, if you have a chance, let's end the wide receiver debate here. If you have a chance to draft any one of these guys, you should probably go and get them.
Yeah.
This is going to be a high-powered offense.
Well,
they're not going to disappoint.
Here's my question. And before we hammer that point home, because I'm Stephon Diggs or Cooper Kupp?
Cooper Kupp.
There you go. There's my answer.
Yeah, I mean, but
they're the same, like the same round, and they're going around the same person, so they both fall to you, and he's the third of those three guys.
DJ Moore or Cooper or Stephon Diggs.
That's what I'm saying. He falls to that spot as a third guy there. Like Stephon Diggs is the hardest one to click the draft button on for me right now, comfortably, because what's around him too.
Yeah, he might be again, Michael Pittman or Stephon Diggs. For me, it's Michael Pittman. I'd probably take Diggs over London, to be honest with you. I'd take Diggs over London.
Yeah,
I'd pretty much take a lot of people over London.
Yeah. Let's move. That's just the point I want to make. There is he is the most difficult to click the draft button on because there's such a discrepancy. Because there's so much unknown. Like, we're not questioning him in Buffalo. We're questioning him in Houston because of the pieces around him. Because is he the number one anymore? And the argument is no, Nico Collins is now.
Right. And yeah, again, to Nico Collins is the number one there.
Yeah. So that's the whole point. Let's talk real quick. I want to bring up one thing about C.J. Stroud, which is a point I wanted to bring up. That's what I was searching on my phone for, because I want to look up Davis Mills' stats before. And, just humor myself. But Davis Mills had 2-3 top 10 finishes in 2022 as the quarterback of the Texans.
They stunk.
They were horrible, but they were a passing offense.
Well, they were so far behind in games. In every single game.
He still finished as a top 10 quarterback 2-3 times. And so this team can pass the ball and have been able to pass the ball in recent history. And C.J. Stroud just does it better. But Does he move the needle that much for me to draft him above Pat Mahomes? No. Does he move the needle that much for me to draft him in a top 5 round when I could get Kyler Murray in the 6th or 7th? No. That's my argument about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. And to kind of agree with you, like I don't own any CJ Stroud.
Yeah, it's hard for me to want to pick him where he's going.
Because I agree with you. I would.
He's not mobile. He's really not that
mobile. He's mobile enough.
He's mobile-ish.
I would go and get Kyler Murray over him.
Yeah.
But the weapons now that he has from a passing perspective,
I agree.
It's so hard to be like,
I wish he goes out. You know what?
What if he goes out and you can get the ball into Tank Dell, Nico Collins, and Stephon Diggs' hand at 5 yards, and they can go and take it 80.
I don't think Diggs is doing that anymore.
He can.
He could, but I don't.
All right, he can.
I guess my biggest thing here too is he's more of a pocket passer. But let's move on to running backs here.
Let's mix it up with Joe Mixon.
Let's mixer. Let's get a mixer going.
Joe, if you don't have a line of
cocktail
mixers, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Joe's mixers. Get your mix on.
Mix. Yeah.
Joe, get your mix on. There you go. We'll take the royalties from that one.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'll shoot you a DM.
Joe Mixon, I loved him in Cincinnati every single year. He was a volume play, and judging by Dameon Pierce's performance last year, he's a volume play again this year. And really, the benefit for Mixon here is similar to how it was in Cincinnati. You have a high-powered passing offense that has to respect the passing game on the defense. The defensive side has to respect the passing game, which opens up the running game. And so they're going to play off Mixon really well, and he does that really well. And to me, where you can get Mixon, it's like, Singletary is probably the biggest volume value pick in ADP right now, but Mixon is a great volume.
I mean, this is the argument for if you're in the 6th, 7th, or 8th pick in the middle of the round drafting, if you wanted to go ahead and fade running back and go stack wide receiver first 4 picks, Mixon Connor in the 5th and 6th.
Yeah, Jones, Connor, Mixon, Connor, you can make it happen easily.
He is one of those guys where you can go zero and not true zero running back, but go fade running back in the top 4 picks and get him. You can argue
4 rounds is close to zero running back. Yeah. It's not true zero, but it's close to.
But that's where you can get Mixon late, and he's gonna be almost like Connor like last year.
Yeah.
And that's where he was essentially last year. Last year he dropped, and people were drafting him in the 4th or 5th round.
Yep.
And look at the numbers he put up last year.
And he got stuffed to the goal line multiple times.
I'll say this: Mixon is one of those guys. And it's happened to me in the last 3 seasons. Mixon always has one game a season where he just drops a 50 burger on you.
2 seasons ago, you have a 4 touchdown or 5 touchdown game?
I played against him that.
Yeah,
I remember back-to-back weeks. It was him with the 4 burger, and then the week after I faced
Kamara in the
Kamara when he had
Christmas Day 6 touchdown.
Yeah,
I remember that.
I went back-to-back weeks facing both those guys, and I'm just what in the living hell is happening here?
Yet you won the league, so
in both those years,
keep complaining.
But Mixon is a guy that I absolutely really like this year, and I think that the fact that they brought in Mixon shows how little faith that they have in Dameon Pierce. And I think Dameon Pierce, I know you do. Yes. I know what your argument's going to be.
You finish your point because I'll bring up my point.
I know, but you love Dameon Pierce, and he might as well just be on the Giants because
I wish they would take him.
I know you do because you absolutely love him.
I really don't love him that much. I really don't love him that much because he's a Florida prospect. So I can't love him that much.
But you love him from just an illogical reason.
It's the straight.
You drafted him at a later round his rookie year, and he did halfway decent for you, and you fell in love with him, and he hasn't done anything since.
Well, because
he lost the job last year.
Yes.
To Devin Singletary. They didn't trust him enough when Singletary left. They didn't trust him enough, and they traded for Joe Mixon to bring him in. And Mixon is a better running back than Devin Singletary is. And he is going to lose more and more of a workload, to the point where he was returning kickoffs last year as a backup running back.
I say that a good sign.
I mean, that's a good sign, I guess.
No, all I'm saying about Dameon Pierce, what I love about him is the way he runs the football. He's very difficult to take down.
Inefficiently?
Well, everybody last year was inefficient. Singletary had a couple boom games that pushed his efficiency up and inflated it. You take those outliers out, he was horrible inefficient because that offensive line was not a good run blocking offensive line. Period.
Yes.
So give Pierce a little bit of carry, because there were games where he was breaking 3 tackles before he got to the line of scrimmage. So I'm just saying. But now that being said, there were about 5 times he couldn't put the ball into the end zone from the 1-yard line.
Right.
So a little bit of blocking problem there, but a lot of you got to find a yard.
A lot of his problem.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, I'm not saying draft Dameon Pierce. I'm just saying I like this backfield. I like Joe Mixon. I think Mixon comes in and he elevates the running game and elevates what you can do outside the running game. He's a veteran. When you watch Mixon run compared to some of these other guys like Singletary and Dameon Pierce, the guys who've been in this backfield, he slows the game down. He looks slower, but he's moving fast because he's just like Connor does too. There's these veterans that they just see the game, they see the field. Kamara's perfect at it too as well.
He has great vision. He's patient. He lets and he's going to have, again, he's coming to it might be the best. I think Jacobs might be the best transfer scenario where it's kind of a very similar offense to a very similar offense from.
Well, I also like Aaron Jones for the same purpose too.
Yeah,
because there's less competition behind him.
I'm not talking about the competition. I'm talking about purely the style of offense where it's a high powered offense. He's not facing a lot of stacked boxes. He's going to Houston where it's almost very similar to it. And I think he's used. Nothing's really going to change much from him. This isn't like a DeMarco Murray when he went to the Eagles, where he went from an I formation to having to run out of shotgun. It plays to Mixon's style, the way the Texans are set up.
Yep.
Where I think he's going to be very successful this year. Again, I'm looking for him to be a top 10 running back, more towards the tail end of that, but a top 10 running back, an RB1, definitely in that top 12 range. But he's going to have the numbers anytime and he's great at the goal line. So you get him
and in
down
the passing game.
Yeah, you get him down there, and with Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell, this offense is going to be higher flying. If they get leads in games, it's going to be milking the clock. It's going to be Mixon time. It's going to be Mixon time.
Mixon time. Well, mix it in. So one point on Mixon, then we'll move on to the tight end briefly before we close out this AFC South. But the one thing about Mixon that I like and I dislike, or 2 things. One thing I like about Mixon is because his hands he has out the backfield, and like you said, the familiar offense to what he has in Cincinnati. But the one thing I dislike is
he's not Dameon Pierce.
No, that he's not going to get the opportunities out the backfield without injury like he did in Cincinnati. And I think that's going to be a little bit tougher for you as a fantasy owner, it's built into his ADP. I hate hearing the term baked in because fantasy pros and others, I'm sorry, but you guys use it way too often. Derek Brown out there, D-Bro, too often used baked in. But it is built into the ADP, and the ADP itself is telling you, okay, this guy's not going to have the opportunities out the backfield he used to. He may not have the yardage output. Okay, I still want to buy him at that ADP because I still think it's cheap for the running back he's going to be.
Well, and that's the argument. It's I think his ADP is kind of where it should be. There's not very many running backs that I have above him that I would draft after him, but he's right where he should be in terms of where I think he's going to end up finishing.
Yeah,
there are a couple of guys where I do think that you have some bolstered ADP,
but
for no reason. But
I will say here's my argument of taking Aaron Jones over him, because they're going pretty close together. I think Aaron Jones is going to have a bigger hold on the passing game in Minnesota than Mixon's going to have in Houston in terms of targets.
Well, would you settle for this argument then? Would you settle for, if it's standard, Mixon over Aaron Jones, and if it's PPR, Jones over Mixon?
Yeah, because I think in terms of total carries,
because I can get on that. I think
total carries are going to be probably similar.
I think the offense is better. I like
the offense is better in Houston. He may have more carries. I think touchdowns you'll probably end up seeing very similar between the two of those guys because Aaron Jones finds the end zone. Aaron Jones is a bigger home run hitter than Mixon is. We've seen that.
Sure.
So he has opportunities there, and we know the Vikings are going to need the help from the running game, and that's why they brought a veteran in like that. But I agree.
But I also think they're going to be down in games more.
But again, do you want what Aaron Jones could do with the football in his hands? I think it's going to be there, especially with Hawkinson out, till whenever he can play with his knee. So that I agree. The PPR, I would go Jones over Mixon. Mixon over Jones in standard.
All right, so let's finish up with the AFC South and the last team in that with the tight ends here. And I say tight ends because there are two guys here that I think
there's one you should draft.
There's one you should draft, and there's one you should absolutely keep your eye on. Dynasty, keeper leagues that you should absolutely look for later in drafts. And
I'd say more dynasty than keeper, but yes.
Yeah. I think it might take a year or two for him to emerge. So the
or
guy
3 based on contracts.
Yeah, maybe. The guy that you're drafting is Dalton Schultz, right? And I think that he's the guy to really own here. That he's going to be consistent, and that's what he is.
Yep.
He is a really good, he's a red zone guy. He's again, I don't want to say this again in this episode, but he's just very run of the mill. He's an above average tight end. He's outside that. That top end tight end group, but like everyone outside of, stopping at Engram, you really fall into the next grouping of tight ends, which is where he is, right? The Njokus, the Musgraves, the
Schultz,
Jake
Goddard,
Ferguson, Goddard. All these guys are very, very similar.
But I think he's more at the top end of that.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't shy away from drafting him, but I wouldn't overdraft on him. Like, I'd be perfectly happy getting Freiermuth to a round or two later,
or more, yeah.
Than getting Schultz, depending on what other value is there. I do like him. I wouldn't shy away from drafting him. Again, if you're fading tight end, he's one of the next grouping of guys that I feel comfortable enough to draft and be as a tight end 1.
Yeah.
Right. I see him kind of in that range. The tight end 11 to 14, or 10 to 14 range is where he's probably going to end up finishing in that grouping of 5.
Yeah.
I don't think he has the upend ability to end up going in as a top 10 tight end.
Well, he showed his promise and his prowess with that team when Tank Dell went down.
Yes. But you also saw Noah Brown emerge. You also saw
other players emerge too, but the consistency.
Nico Collins get hyper targeted.
But Schultz's consistency and his touchdown and red zone targeting went up for sure. And I think that's the only knock on him, which is why there's other guys, like you said, Musgrave, Freiermuth, these other guys getting him a couple rounds later, because the outputs are going to be so similar and the finish is going to be so similar, in my opinion, that on a week-to-week basis, you may miss out on a couple boom games.
Yeah.
From, like a 2-touchdown game from Schultz or something like that. Is it,
I mean, I go with my tried and true, Hunter Henry.
Yeah.
I think he's great.
He does that to you.
He does.
But Cade Stover's the other guy we wanted to talk about. And, the rookie out of Ohio State, he's got the athleticism. He's got the full package. It's unfortunate that they draft him after Schultz signs a 3-year contract. However, this guy's going to find his way on the offense. If anything happens to Schultz, they've got an immediate receiving tight end.
We still have Brevin Jordan there, so I think Cade Stover is going to be
it's
a guy that can develop, and Brevin Jordan as a receiving tight end.
He had a pretty good season last year.
He had a very good season. But I think Cade Stover is kind of that traditional, every down tight end that can develop into being an every down tight end for this team. Like I said, the Texans are a team of luxury right now because they have so much young. They have so many young players on the team that they have so much money to spend.
Yes.
And they can go and get Dalton Schultz and be like, we'll pay you for 3 years. We're going to go and draft another tight end and keep reloading. Okay, cool.
See ya.
Then it's the same thing at court. The money's not tied up at quarterback. They can go pay Mixon. They can go trade for Mixon and pay him because the money's not tied up at running back. They have Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, and that's it.
Yeah.
They on the defensive side, they're top corner, their top linebacker,
and the edge rusher.
And
everybody
the edge rusher.
is.
They're all young players, so the money's not tied up there yet. So they can do some things from a financial standpoint that other teams don't have the luxury of doing. it's the same thing with the Jets, right? Like the Jets have so much young talent on that team that they can go and kind of overpay for some of these veteran players just to bring them in because their money's not tied up anymore.
Well, they're not doing what the Giants did and overpay for Kenny Galladay and Darren Waller.